The organized labor yesterday made real its threat by shutting down the country after it ordered a nationwide strike in the wake of the recent hike in electricity tariffs and the failure to reach a resolution on the contentious issue of national minimum wage with the federal government. Coming together under the force of the Nigeria Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress, the organized labor also plunged the entire nation into total blackout after it shut down the hitherto troubled national grid. However, after an exhaustive deliberation that ended late last night at the office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, the federal government and organized labor reached a common goal on the national minimum wage that is higher than 60,000 naira for Nigerian workers. The meeting also resolved that no worker will be victimized or made a scapegoat as a result of the industrial action. All right, Rufai, seems like we're making some progress here. We saw what happened yesterday, heard reports. We reported it live here as well on Rise News throughout the day in terms of the impact of the industrial strike action by organized labor. Your take on this update?
With due respect, I don't think we've made any progress. And I think this is the things people also say about labor. You start a fight, you get it twisted and convoluted in the end. That agreement signed that I had to wait till about 11, 12 midnight to get was no agreement. I'll read it to you. It talks about respect for the Commander of Chief of Armed Forces. It says we'll go beyond 60,000. 60,100 naira is beyond 60,000. Nothing was said about the electricity tariff conversation. And they said they will go back to their unions today to see what they can say on all parties signed it. Nothing was said. These were not the arguments. If you cannot, in that negotiation, be able to state out the empirical facts on the table and state your position and agree on the position, then it's as good as signing nothing. All of a sudden, they say they are going to go back to the drawing board in 1 week and make continuity for a week. Why didn't you meet all this time? This was still the labor minister that went gun blazed on television yesterday, trying to discredit the request, asking where, goodness me, I laugh sometimes in this country, where will the government get the money? I'd like to ask her, where did the government get money to pay your own allowances, ma? Where did the government get money to pay the big fat allowances? Are we not in this same government when last year the government took a supplementary budget to be able to buy cars for National Assembly members, even when we said it was very frivolous? So where did the government get the money? Anyway, President Tinubu, the last time you came to the National Assembly, you told them you would bring the supplementary budget. So it's best you add them to it. At least you're taking a lot of debt to spend on frivolous things. Where did the government get $1 trillion to do 47 kilometers of road? Was that the best funding possible at a time where we're in dire straits? So as far as I'm concerned, I think the labor union should go back and look at that agreement. There was nothing really. They could have deferred that meeting till they had cogent points and they are able to put a position forward that the government would agree to and all of that. But they said there's going to be meeting in 1 week. So I think that signature signing was just to get something, and so that they will not say after meeting all through the night. And after Labour claimed that they were intimidated, because you remember the story that was making out of, military there, but the military had been able to debunk that the NSA came with security officials there. But why would the NSA even come with security officials to a Labour meeting in the first place? Anyway, it's the NSA. So I just said they just signed that for the sake of signing something. But that was no deal to me as far as I'm concerned. It makes mockery of everything.
Okay, the federal government has an obligation to prevent a situation that has both economic and security implications, which are the two things indicated by Labour going on strike. Yesterday, we had an expert, a financial expert, an economist on this program, Dr. Adidipe, who calculated the amount of money that Nigeria will lose on a daily basis as a result of the strike. No responsible government will allow that to continue. That's number one. Number two, the federal government of Nigeria also has an obligation to resolve the matter of the fact that the National Minimum Wage Act of 2019 has already expired, and to come up with new legislation. Number three, Labour also has the right to defend the integrity, the dignity, the rights of labor, of workers. But as the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice has pointed out, there are legal issues that have also been violated. He, citing sections 41 sub 1, section 42 sub 1, and section 36 sub 1 of the Labor Disputes Act. I do not need to repeat exactly what those sections say. However, the only reasonable way out, as Bayo Ononoga, who is special advisor to the President on Information and Strategy, is that blackmail will not work. Intimidation will not work. The only way out of this gridlock, so to speak, is negotiation. And it is therefore interesting that the federal government of Nigeria is willing and ready and is already sitting at the negotiating table with organized labor. Yesterday, they had a meeting. On Sunday, they had a meeting. A meeting has also been arranged for today. At yesterday's meeting, which lasted for 6 hours at the office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, a number of resolutions were reached. One, that those who took part in the industrial action will not be victimized. Two, that the federal government is willing and ready to go beyond 60,000 naira that it had offered. But Labour has not said anything about the 615, 497,000 or the 454,000 that it agreed, that it recommended, that it proposed at the end of the day. The tripartite meeting continues today, we're told. A notice has already been put out. Yesterday, it was meeting between federal government and labor. What is organized private sector saying? Because organized private sector is also part of it. If they were to pay, 494,000 naira as basic salary for people in the private sector, well, maybe that will make Gbemi, who is just coming into the studio now, a millionaire. So can they afford it? Can government afford to pay? Which is the point. By Mohammed Idris, the Minister of Information, and Minister of State for Labor Relations, Nkuruka Onyeje-Ocha, who was saying that the bill will come to about 9.5 trillion. And that where would the Nigerian government find the money from? What many do not realize is that they overpaid people in the National Assembly. If you make basic salary, 494,000 naira that labor is demanding, in fact, their own pay will go up. So what I think is important is that reason should prevail. Common sense should prevail. There's one senator who says he's a senator of common sense. This is the time when we need common sense. And I think that the federal government humbling itself and saying that, look, negotiations should continue, is towing the right path. And I hope that organized labor, that is also meeting today, they have sent out a notice for a meeting. We also consider the federal government's proposal and save Nigerians the mystery that was experienced yesterday. Fuel scarcity came back through the back door. Hospitals could not function. Persons could not travel, including Super Eagles stars who were stranded in Abuja and in Lagos, and they could not go to the camp in Uyo. Persons requiring critical, treatment in our hospitals. I don't know how many people died. I don't think Labour will want a situation where the same people whose interest it wants to defend, will just die in an unpreventable manner. So the dialogue we recommend, the negotiation we recommend, and we hope that President Tinubu will pay more attention to this or more important issue rather than the dancing around about national anthem.
Absolutely. All right, so very quickly, the truth is that whilst the strike action yesterday did cripple, in many parts, the economy in terms of the number of unions that joined, air transport workers, maritime workers. According to some dock workers, they said that they didn't allow any ship to berth. We saw the impact on electricity, power. So it's not just in private homes that this would have a huge impact on. Imagine the amount of money spent on diesel or to provide alternative source of power for small businesses, and the amount of money. And that's why, people like Dr. Adedikpe, who was with us yesterday, could put the loss, our everyday loss, at 305.9 billion naira approximately, in terms of how much we potentially would lose daily as a result of strike action. And so it's easy when you look at those numbers to say, oh, organized labor should be, considerate, they should not, kill the same people they're trying to defend. But actually, the person or the group of people that ought to be considerate is the federal government, because the reason for a strike action is as a result of, is a form of protest and to demonstrate the fact that the federal government is not listening. And it has been said that they had an opportunity, and Labour has detailed the timeline of when strike actions were called off, including up until recently when 2 weeks ago a nationwide protest was instituted in order to protest a hike in electricity tariff. So the federal government, in considering its citizens that they represent, should have thought about the suffering on the masses before allowing this to linger on and get to this point. Because it's easy to point fingers at organized labor and say that, oh, you're not being considerate. But the federal government itself that is elected in trust of the people should have thought about the impact of a strike action before allowing it to get to this point. And this is what a number of people are saying. It's great. The reason I talked about there being progress, because progress also in terms of the over 60,000 naira can be relative. But at least we've moved from point A, even if it's point A, point 1, A1, A2, before we get to B, we have at least moved. What we're hopeful for is at the end of the day, because we do not want to see further sufferings of the people and a further loss or a bleeding of the economy that we cannot afford to have at the moment, is that there will be some form of agreement. In terms of where that amount will reach, I tried to get that out of Dr. Adedikpe in terms of recommendation yesterday. He did say that federal government could move, and organized private sector in that tripartite committee could consider a move above the 60,000 naira, but not very optimistic about getting to 100,000 naira. I'm glad as well that the presidential spokesperson, Ajuri Ngelale, broke down yesterday. I think he must have listened to the show yesterday in terms of an explanation of how this would impact the economy in terms of inflation if they do pay that 494,000 naira. So let's keep the conversation going, but very importantly, let us be able to solve the challenges and the hardship that people are facing at the moment. But as people have said, it's hardship.
How many percent inflation did you say we're out to the economy if they pay for something?
I can't remember now.
No empirical fact.
No, yeah, he did. I can't remember. He just detailed in terms of, oh, this is the reason why he had mentioned. I'm saying that because remember we had criticized the fact that it kept quiet for too long and not been able to even. Well, no, at least what they spoke. That's a step. So in terms of step movement, I think it's important to keep engaging the people whilst they do the calculation of the inflation numbers from yesterday. He released a statement yesterday. Well, let's move on to our next story this morning. Jury selection in Hunter Biden's federal gun trial kicked off yesterday in Delaware as he faced 3 felony charges stemming from his alleged illegal purchase and possession of a firearm in 2018 while he was a drug user. President Joe Biden was not at the hearing as he was scheduled to attend a fundraiser in Connecticut, but he did issue a statement declining to weigh in on the trial, but offering a statement of support for his son. That came days after a Manhattan jury found former American President Donald Trump guilty of all 34 counts of falsifying business records in his hush money criminal trial, an unprecedented and historic verdict that makes him the first former president in U.S. history to be convicted of felony. Joe Biden's son was indicted by a federal grand jury in September after a diversion agreement for a felony gun offense and a plea deal related to misdemeanor tax charges unraveled when U.S. District Judge Marilyn Norica questioned whether the agreement would allow him to avoid potential future charges. Right. Last week was the camp of Donald Trump. They have moved the panel.
It's 1-1.
No, it's 0.51. No, because it was Trump. This one is the son.
You know why I say it's 1-1?
No, why is it 1-1?
In the eyes of right-wing Republicans and Fox News watchers, it's 1-1. Because they've always touted this. Because if you watch Fox News a lot, liberal media in America does not report a lot of this Hunter Biden's case and all of that, because obviously they are Democratic leaning and all of that. But Fox News has always been at their neck, bumper to fender, or let me use bumper to bumper the Nigerian place, but I think it's supposed to be bumper to fender. So they've constantly been at this. What was the case here? Securing a firearm while he was a drug user. In fact, there are talks about using, his ex-wife, to give evidence, testimony, and even Bo Biden, his brother's, wife, to be able to give testimony against that. He was, he was a known drug user and all of that. But we can't also deny that fact, because even his father had talked about the struggles of Hunter Biden with his drug and everything, and that's why it was very painful when Bo Biden died. And funny enough, a couple of days ago was Bo Biden's remembrance. That's Joe Biden's son. And we all remember, and apart from this, the Republicans have also been pushing this deal that happened in Ukraine as how, Joe Biden uses influence, and also their tax charges here. And when that case was pushed around, it was supposed to be, a deal as regards it, but the magistrate kicked it out at that point in time and said, okay, this should go to trial because they must be able to charge him in the future. So their tax misdemeanor, he violated paying about 1.4 million in taxes, and tax is a big deal in America.
Yeah.
And also the fact that there were visible evidence that he was a drug user when he acquired the firearm, which is also very dangerous and all of that. Anyway, he tried to put the firearm aside, but he was caught in the act. So let the jury be set up. If they finally score a point as regards this, I'm sure the Republicans have something to campaign. So when they are saying that Trump indictment, which is a very sad one, the Republicans will be throwing this at them. And it's politics season, it's open season here and there, and all of that, But the difference is, that's against a candidate. Hunter Biden is not a candidate, it's Joe Biden that's a candidate. But Joe Biden is standing, and Jill Biden, they're standing by their son and say, they love their son, he's gone through his patch, and they'll help him go through this at the point in time. But let's see how the court will rule as regards this.
All right.
Okay, I'm reluctant to make a political connection between the Trump case and the Hunter Biden case. His name is Hunter Biden, 54 years old. However, where the connection lies is that this is the first time in American history that the son of a sitting president, will face this kind of trial. And the first time also that a former president of the United States, in this case, Donald Trump, will be convicted and faces the possibility of becoming effectively a convicted felon when his sentencing is read out on July 11. Now, Hunter Biden in 2018 was said to have possessed a gun. Contrary to the laws of the state of Delaware, where his family lives. And what are the laws there? What is being charged for? 3 count charges. Count 1 and 2 says he bought a gun, a Colt Cobra 3.8, when he knew that he was under the influence of crack cocaine, which is an established fact. The second point is that he wrote false and fictitious statements. In the state of Delaware, you are required when you are buying a gun to declare whether you are under the influence or not. And he answered no. That in itself is a felony. So now that the matter has gone to trial, he faces the possibility of a 25-year imprisonment. That's the maximum punishment. But will he get that as a first offender? That is left to the court to determine. Now, how does President Joe Biden come into this matter? Now, as president, if he wins in November, he may well decide to pardon his son. He has that prerogative. Under Clinton and other presidents, we saw them, granting state pardon to persons who are close to them. But for now, the White House is saying President Biden is not thinking in that direction. But it's his son, a 54-year-old son. Will we allow him to bear the tag of a convicted fellow? But these are the details of the case. It's a gun purchase case under the influence of crack cocaine. And, the law is the law. That's what the state of Delaware is trying to prove. That is the case. That is the subject.
The law is the law, and one of the things that the American cases of both former President Donald Trump and now current president's son, Hunter Biden, has proven is that when it comes to the law in the United States of America, there are no sacred cows. Everyone can have their day in court, and this has, in some measure, upheld the democracy that America has enjoyed. I say this because whenever we look at a strong democracy and the role that the judiciary plays, the rule of law, it's important to demonstrate by action, by example, just how well it is played out. And for me, this is one of the critical lessons across the world, especially for the African continents, that we can look at in terms of no one is spared. Whether you're a former president or the son of the current president, if you're found to be foul of the law, you will face the law. And in fact, what might happen in the Hunter Biden case, as has been mentioned, is that all eyes would be on him and the judiciary and on the jury in order for them to do what is right and ensure due process is followed. And the conversation, or perhaps the maybe disadvantage in that instance, is that he might also be made an example of that. We do not take lightly the fact that because you're the son of the president who treats your matter with kids' gloves. It's in court to see how this plays out. If that happens where he's convicted, as has been mentioned, it will be historic on two levels for the United States of America, where the president who's also running again, his son is convicted, and the former president is convicted. But I still maintain the 0.5 and 1, because 1, Donald Trump is the man on the ballot. 0.5, it's Biden's son that's in this case convicted, or that might be convicted. We'll see how this plays out in the long run.